Hi everyone, today we got a little bit more sells. We talked about some weakness yesterday, but we ended up going to a slightly higher high in the pre-market, and then we sold through the session, bounced mid-session. Now we're kind of selling here into the end of the session. Is this consolidation? We haven't broken this structure on the low, but let's take a quick look at all of the charts as we head into the weekend. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got the government reaching into potentially Intel. This hasn't quite happened yet, but you have a lot of people coming out and supporting this idea that Intel is essential to US national security, despite the fact that we have TSMC, which is starting to build chips in the United States, which also is important for national security, but they're saying Intel absolutely essential here as they build a lot of chips for a lot of different things, even though they are not really at the forefront of AI or GPUs. But on the back of this news, you got Intel up 3% on Friday and 23% for the week. So massive moves here for Intel. And you did have the president coming out and supporting the CEO of Intel after kind of maligning him as a potential failure. But now everybody's on the same page. Intel is set to receive a lot of money, and they've already received a lot of money, but it's likely that they're going to get even more. Moving over to fear and greed, 64 from a 63, very little movement on the day. Still greed across the board on the major indicators. Breadth did turn down just a little bit. We talked about that yesterday. Not quite doing as well as we thought that it might have, given the rally that we saw. And then put call ratio at an extreme greed area. This continues to downtrend, and then volatility stepped up slightly. We'll take a look at that later. And then greed on bonds. Moving over to the economic calendar, we did get retail sales in line with expectation there. Retail sales here slightly down for the month over month, but still pretty good numbers relative to what we were expecting. Previous number also was revised up pretty heavily. Inflation data, though, higher than expectations now after that PPI read that we got this week, and the CPI read, which was just a little bit hotter, but not too bad. But these numbers, 1 year inflation expectations, 4.9%. If that happens, that is going to be an absolute disaster. Moving over to the charts, like we talked about, had a little bit of choppy action, a little bit of bearish action. Down on the day, about 0.25%, coming back below that trend line here. And you can see it on the hourly chart. Structurally, this is technically broken here. We're below the 55, below the 21. Does this pull back to this previous high around 638.50? And then we get a higher low setup continuation? Or is this going to be more of a topping pattern? I think that is what we are waiting to see. But for now, this is still a consolidation. We haven't broken the structure. Momentum a little bit bearish there. Daily chart momentum stepping a little bit towards bearish, drifting a little lower after hours, but nothing too crazy. This was an options expiration, but you have to consider this is basically 3 days of flat price action. Moving over to the Tasty charts here on that hourly chart, you can see we did get up to that upper ATR trailing stop, and you can see 646.91 was that zone, touched that level and immediately broke down. So is that a top that we need to consider to watch here over the next couple days? Your support right now, 55 EMA, 643.16 on the hourly chart. Your next level is going to be 641.50 in here, but for now, this is still consolidation top. Volume came in at the end of the session. Don't love to see that was selling pressure at the end of the day. But of course, on the 4-hour chart and really all of the longer term charts, this is still very much bullish. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, same kind of thesis, but we're right at the low of this structure, holding this trend line here. Held it really well during the session, surprisingly so. I kind of thought we would break through there, but ended up holding right at the trend line. Can we get a little bit more bounce here, maybe to the 55, 580? But structurally, this is looking not as good here today. We were starting to break some of these structures. Momentum stepping towards bearish on the daily chart as well. And then looking at it here on the RSI, you can see we're right at the SMA, pulling back towards that. Structurally, not super great. 9 EMA down there, 573.54. So on the daily chart, still holding this structure, just a little extended, pulling back here, but on those shorter time frames, we are seeing some bearishness come through. And then looking at the Tasty charts here, you can see trailing stop on the 4-hour, 573.94, pretty much in line with that previous zone that we talked about as a zone of support. Want to see this structure hold. So far, it's holding with the retest today, but looking at that hourly chart, you can see 89 EMA is your support right now. That is 576.75, but you can see structurally, this is showing just a little bit of weakness, trailing stop starting to roll down there just a little bit, 580.63 on the hourly chart. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell came down and tagged that support line once again, 226.02. Momentum stepping to bearish. If this breaks structure here, 226, that is going to be a problem. We'll probably fall to 222.50, maybe 221.50 in here, but for now, we're still holding support. There's still buyers in this 226 area, this previous high area, still holding in there. And then you can see the Dow, big gap up on that United Health news, gave almost all of that back, but it's holding here right at the highs. That is a new wick high, but not quite a new close high. That is still back here on the 23rd of July. Moving over to Mag 7 charts here, you can see on the Mag 7 continues to reject from this major trend line. We're right at it. Consolidation top at resistance. Are we going to pull back? Momentum stepping down. RSI stepping down. Seems like we're going to get at least a little bit of a retracement, really just a pullback in time so far, but either way, a little bit more pullback in time. Let these catch up. If we're going to get the continuation from there, it could take a couple of days for this to catch up. But if we break structure, of course, then you're looking at somewhere between 337 and 341 as your next zone of support. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, both of these hesitating once again, down 0.5% on Apple, still holding support at 230.28, and then looking at Microsoft, another down day below that 9 EMA, right at the 21 as support, 518.91, still in the same consolidation, so structurally not broken, but momentum bearish. RSI a little bit bearish. Price is definitely hesitating here. Have we reached the top of Microsoft between this 520 and 538 area? Absolutely possible. In terms of Apple, it's hard to say because this isn't sitting on its all-time highs the way that it was, but did get a nice push from the news around tariffs for Apple. Still holding support, certainly could hold in here and push. It's not as extended, but the momentum today did step down for the first time in a couple of days. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla was down about 1.5%. Big structural break back below the trend line. Still holding that 9 EMA, so it's not impossible that we hold support in here. The level is 224.47, but structurally, it looks a lot weaker, right? We had this kind of breakout here, retest structure. We were looking for the bounce. Did get a smidgen of a bounce, but it seems like it's failed at this point. Still have potential for a low, higher low structure here maybe, but really this could go either way. I would be patient on Tesla at this point. And then looking at NVIDIA, still holding that 180 level. Didn't think it would do it. Got below it for a fair amount of the session, and then we did end up getting back above it, 180.45 for the close, slipping a little after hours, 180.18. In terms of structure, of course, it is still very much bullish, but the momentum in RSI, kind of the same thesis as everything else, starting to show potential for a topping pattern. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples was up, still holding the level 81.85 as your zone of support. Momentum continues to fade. RSI still a little bit bullish here. Do we get a higher low setup continuation? Certainly a possibility, and it continues to hold, so do kind of like that there. And then looking at discretionary, as you can see, continues to hold this trend support as well, despite being down about 1/4. As long as this trend continues to hold, we're still looking for 235. If this trend structure breaks, probably going to head back down towards that 219.18 area. Moving over to the dollar fell all session, almost straight down through the session, back down to that trend support, continues to hold that trend. We'll see if it breaks next week or not. Momentum a little bearish, RSI a little bearish, starting to look like it's more likely to break than not at this point. But for now, structurally still intact, looking for a higher low structure here and a bigger push to that next level, 101.25. So far, this hasn't broken yet. Moving over to breadth. Breadth continues to fall here. Gap down and dojied yesterday, but got a bigger continuation down to that 51.75 level today. Momentum a little bearish there on 20-day. 50-day, same kind of thesis. You now have a high, lower high structure here at this 62.25 level. Is this going to continue down back towards those previous lows or the next level around 40? Seems more likely now than not that it's likely to pull back, but for now, still at the bottom of this consolidation zone. We're above the SMA here, but definitely showing consistently lower highs. Moving over to bonds, J&K was basically flat on the day, up just 3 cents, still in the same consolidation. Still looks like a bit of a bullish triangle here. And then looking at TLT, still got this kind of rising pattern, higher lows and higher highs. Is this another higher low structure? Hard to say. Not quite to where you would expect it to be yet. Momentum's a little bearish. RSI is a little bearish. We're still interesting to see this falling, considering that everyone says the Fed is going to be potentially cutting rates now that we've gotten the new inflation data. But I think the bond market has really sussed this out. The bonds are falling, which means rates are probably going to stay where they're at, in my opinion. Moving over to the VIX. VIX popped up back above that 14.7 level. We were below it there for one day, popped above it yesterday, got a little bit of a continuation above it here today. Do we get a wick and kind of rejection? Is it going to be very similar to this structure? This is a zone where we tend to see perks, spikes up on the VIX, and you can see momentum stepping to bullish there. Just a little bit of life on the VIX. Nothing crazy yet, but there is some life. Do we get a continuation next week? That is the bigger question. Moving over to my accounts, I really didn't do anything here today. You can see I did roll out and down that IWM position to 228. Want to see another potential bounce. Honestly, I should have taken it off early in the session, but I just didn't. And then we ended up falling a little bit more into the end of the session. Still holding that 226 area. Still, as long as that holds, I'll continue to stay bullish here on the Russell, but really no movement. And then same thing here on the dollar. It's right at the trend support. Want to see it bounce from there. Haven't done anything with either of these positions today. Let me know down in the comments section if you are buying into Intel on the back of this news that they are essential for national security. What did you think of retail sales? Does it reassure you that the economy is still good? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.